Welcome to Improve Your Writing video number 30. We'll be covering punctuation, specifically part 2 of the comma. We'll be covering rules, or rule number 7, which is non-essential clauses or phrases. Rule number 8, which is appositives. And rule number 9, which regards an interrupting word, phrase, or clause. If you'd like to get notifications for this series, please click subscribe. If you like the video, please hit like, and check out links to books and videos in the description, like a link to the companion reference, Improve Your English Writing. Let's get right to it. So rule number 7. Rule number 7. Use a comma at the end of a sentence, or commas mid-sentence, to separate a non-essential subordinate clause, verbal phrase, prepositional phrase, transitional expression, or parenthetical expression. So basically, it's a non-essential any one of these. And one of the two essential rules to remember, or fundamental rules to remember about punctuation, is non-essential elements are always separated with punctuation. So here we see these non-essential elements we're going to separate with commas. So non-essential elements are always separated with punctuation, but non-essential elements are always separated with punctuation, but essential elements are never separated with punctuation. Those are two fundamental rules to remember. So, and then basically in the next slide, there's some mid-sentence examples. And these may be judged as an interrupting the sentence flow, requiring a comma, which is rule number 9. I know we're on rule number 7, but if you judge it to be that way, just remember I am going to get to rule number 9, and it's covered under that rule. So remember, we're looking for non-essential these at the end or mid-sentence. I'll just cover it in this order. So this is the order. So these examples will be in this order. So here's an example of a subordinate clause that's not essential. So we separate with commas. Farmco's principal office, which is in Ohio, has an excellent reputation. Now we'd probably know from the context where Farmco's principal office is. So therefore, this is the reason I say it's not essential. It's probably just added information that it's in Ohio. Therefore, we would separate it with commas. And here we have an example of a non-essential verbal phrase. They evicted the renter, having failed to collect any rent. Probably evicting a renter for collecting rent is probably understood from the context. Therefore, we will put a comma separated with a comma because it is most likely non-essential. And just a tidbit, an ing phrase at the end of a sentence is often non-essential. So you'll see a sentence like this with comma, and then you'll have this phrase, this verbal phrase starting with an ing. Often it is non-essential, and therefore it's a comma. If it is essential, just like the slide before, if it is an essential element, no comma. So if you actually thought if this having failed to collect any rent, if that was an essential phrase, you would not put the comma. But we're saying that this is a non-essential, therefore we put the comma. Here we have an example of a prepositional phrase which is non-essential, mid-sentence. Then this condition, on the whole, is improving. And here we have a mid-sentence non-essential conjunctive adverb. It could also be a transitional expression right here. If you wanted to throw one in here, it would be the same thing. I studied hard for the exam. The results, however, showed not hard enough. So if you probably have seen this written this way, something in comma or however in commas. And the reason you put commas around it, it's because it is a non-essential conjunctive adverb. That's the reason why the commas are there. And last but not least, it's the non-essential parenthetical expression. I'd rather not attend the party. To tell you the truth is a parenthetical expression. It is non-essential, therefore we will separate it with a comma. Rule number 8, use a comma in a sentence or commas mid-sentence to separate an appositive adjective or a non-essential appositive. So the key is non-essential. An appositive adjective is just an adjective that follows a noun. In English, adjectives come before the noun, but actually if the adjective comes after, which they usually I think come in pairs, it's called an appositive adjective. And an appositive is just a noun or phrase that renames the preceding noun or pronoun. So appositive is just something that comes after that's renaming what came before. So that is basically what an appositive is, and that's why you see this appositive adjective. So the appositive adjective is just coming after instead of before. So here an appositive is just something that renames what came before. One of the ways, here's a clue, one of the ways to help determine if the appositive is essential or non-essential is this. So is the location, or a useful way of telling if it's essential or non-essential, is the location of the proper noun. Usually there will be a proper noun. When the appositive follows a proper noun, the appositive is usually not essential. Not always not essential. Usually, I should maybe have underlined that, essential. And when a proper noun is the appositive, it is typically, but not always, essential. So really what it comes down to is when you look at the appositive, you have to say, is this essential or non-essential? So let's look at some examples of non-essential appositives. My youngest brother, Jack, is an attorney. So we'd surround Jack with commas because we'd probably know, someone stating their youngest brother, probably know from context who their youngest brother is. You only have one youngest brother. So if you're renaming, Jack is renaming this youngest brother. Jack is in a positive renaming youngest brother. And we would assume we know who the youngest brother is, therefore it's non-essential. We could actually say my youngest brother is an attorney. We should be able to understand that because the person probably has only one youngest brother. So since it's not essential, we put commas around it. Dr. Cooper, my psychologist, last saw me on June 12th. We would probably know Dr. Cooper from the context was this person's psychologist. So more than likely, this renaming is just additional information. If it wasn't, that's why I'm saying if you deem this to be essential, you do not separate with commas. But more than likely, this psychologist is renaming the proper noun. We probably know from context that Dr. Cooper is the psychologist. So therefore, since this positive, since it's not essential, would be separated with commas. Let's look at some essential appositives. My sister Jane, is my sister Jane is an attorney. And I do have a sub-bullet. If the person only had one sister, the appositive would be non-essential and would be separated with commas. So here's an example if we have to know from the context what it is. If the person had multiple sisters, my sister could be referring to any one of them. So, and then we put in Jane, and we know which one it is because having the name here is essential to the meaning of which sister it is. So therefore, since it's essential, we would not separate with commas. But if the person only had one sister, we'd probably know that they only have one sister and who that sister is. Therefore, would actually in that case be non-essential. We'd separate it with commas. There you go. So a lot of times it depends on what the context is, but I'm saying in this example the person has multiple sisters, therefore it is essential. Then an example of a positive adjective. Jim was a big boy, tall and strong. So these are adjectives describing Jim, but usually these would go before Jim, but they don't. So since they come after, then we put a comma there for the appositive adjective. Rule number 9: Use commas to separate a word, phrase, or clause that interrupts the flow of the sentence. The interrupting word, phrase, or clause often becomes, though not always, but often comes between the subject and the verb. Some examples. The injured victim, if you just take out the stuff between the commas, the injured victim collapsed. So now we get a phrase here between the subject and the verb, and it's interrupting the flow of the sentence. Therefore, we put commas around it. The injured victim, because of blood loss, collapsed. Remember, if you just take out a good way to see if this needs commas is just take it out. Miss Anderson is being sued by her previous attorney. See, this is an interrupting clause here. So Ms. Anderson is being sued, so I've been told, by her previous attorney. So this is an interrupting clause. Therefore, we surround it with commas. It happened, in the middle of dinner. This could also be like. It happened like in the middle of dinner. So this is an interrupting phrase. If you have the word like, it would just be an interrupting word, but here you have it. It's not between the subject and the verb. I said it often comes between the subject and the verb, but these last two examples didn't, just to show you what that looked like. So here you see any word, phrase, or clause that interrupts the flow of the sentence is separated with commas. So there are 3 examples. That's it for this video. If you want to get notifications for the series, please click subscribe. If you like the video, please hit like. And check out links to books and videos in the description. Thank you.